And what's up, GC Live fam? Wes Mitchell here, running a moment late. A lot going on today, but plenty to get to here on GC Live. Chris Clark taking a little bit of time with the fam today, but I will be joined momentarily by Mike Uva, who will be filling in for Chris. And we've obviously got a ton to talk about as we sort of turn the page. This is generally the time of the week, start to turn the page from kind of middle of the week, Tennessee game last week, moving ahead to Vanderbilt. And again, I'll be joined by Mike Uva, who's going to hop on momentarily. He was at the coordinator press conferences earlier today, and we got some answers on some things from both Marcus Satterfield and Clayton White. So we're going to dive into those two things. Maybe talk a little bit of recruiting, Oscar Delp's decision coming up today. And, of course, we're going to take your questions as we always do. And as it always is, this show is brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network. You see Clint's information right there. The NMLS number is 71597. Several ways for you to get in contact with Clint. C. Hammond at mortgagenetwork.com. That's the letter C. Hammond at mortgagenetwork.com is the email address. Phone numbers are 803-576-4450 or 803-422-6797. And as you see every single day, right above my head and right above Chris's head, if you're watching on the video version, which we encourage that you do, clinthammond.com. Again, our presenting sponsor right here on GC Live. Appreciate Clint and appreciate all of you. We've got a number of folks already in the chat line. Get in line on our Primal Gourmet chat line. Hit me with your questions, and then, of course, we will talk a little ball, talk some football, and talk about what we may have learned from South Carolina's press conference today. Let's first get it out of the way. Oscar Delp committing later on tonight. This has sort of been a South Carolina-Georgia battle, as all of you know, a recruiting battle that most of you have followed very closely. I feel like this is one of those that even with even if you're a person who doesn't really follow recruiting from a really like day-to-day, hour-to-hour standpoint like some people do, you basically probably followed this one a little bit just because Delp was such a highly regarded target. He was sort of a little bit of a media darling, was willing to do interviews at all time. And really the fan base got into this one with the whole "we want Delp" thing. A valiant effort from Eric Kimry and the rest of that South Carolina staff as Delp gets ready to announce his decision tonight. Again, we go live every afternoon. So if you're listening to this, I don't know, maybe on Thursday morning, going to work, you're listening to it on the podcast, or you're watching it on YouTube after the fact, you probably already know where Oscar Delp has announced that he's going. But obviously, if you're with us here live on Wednesday, my guess, my prediction, sticking with what it's been, I would say for a while, would be that it is Georgia. I think y'all just, when you look at what Georgia's done on the field this year, number one program in the country right now, number one team in the country, they've gotten the ball to their tight ends. And, as much as Delp did sort of grow up a South Carolina fan, and there were some ties there for South Carolina to work through and to kind of use to get themselves involved with Delp, he's still growing up in the state of Georgia. He's still a Georgia kid. And let's be honest, the Georgia program is rolling right now. It was going to be very difficult for South Carolina to find a way to unseat the Bulldogs. So, I think, again, valiant effort. And you look, it's kind of one of those things where if you're South Carolina, you'd obviously love to have Oscar Delp, but my guess is that it's going to be the Bulldogs tonight. And, we'll see what South Carolina does from there. Obviously, the tight end approach, the approach at the tight end position had been, to go for Delp. That was their guy. That was their top target. So we'll see what the plan is to go on from there. Again, a couple of other little recruiting notes, a couple of guys that are on campus right now, the Camden duo. I posted this morning on the Gamecock Central Insider Forum. So if you're recruiting it, you love that type stuff, like to know it as it happens. Of course, we want to see you get on there, GamecockCentral.com. But a couple of guys from Camden, Cortez Lane, who's a class of 2024 running back / wide receiver. was on campus this morning, may still be on campus right now. It's 2:19, and was joined by his teammate, Xavier McLeod. So I think obviously a pretty good sign for South Carolina with McLeod that they were able to get him back on campus after really being a guy that's emerged as a major priority for them. So without further ado, let's go out now. I see him down there. It is your friend and mine rocking his Mix in a Water t-shirt. It's Gamecock Central's Mike Uva. Mike, did we mix any waters, man, as we were getting, I'll say, 2 steps closer to this Braves versus Bo Sox World Series that's coming up? Both of our teams have now advanced.
Well, I probably needed to drink more because our good friend and former colleague over at the state newspaper, Ben Briner, walked into Bar None last night. As soon as I saw him, I was like, all right, might need to have an extra drink or two. All jokes aside, we were not planning on seeing Ben, who's living up in North Carolina now. But yeah, and I said it. Obviously, I'm a Red Sox fan, and I had my fun on. Was it Monday night now? So big congratulations to all you Braves fans out there. I don't know if you can see it. See if I can lean it up. I got my chop on. I don't know
there
if
it is.
Can we say that anymore? I don't want to get, Braves fans or certain people upset anymore, but we got the chop going on. And I'll tell you what, I've been to 2 Braves games before, one playoff game that we covered back during my Watch Fox days, and then one this past year when the Red Sox played. Love that stadium. I don't know if the playoff tickets probably went up. Get like $15 seat, go sit out in right field in that little bar area. Beautiful section. But yeah, congratulations to all you Braves fans out there, because I know we have a lot down here.
Definitely, man. A fun game last night. I'm hoping it's Braves Red Sox, man. That would be awesome. There's a lot of Red Sox fans everywhere, I feel like, but lots of Red Sox fans here as well. So shout out to them. It's been a fun playoffs so far, and I imagine that will only continue. Mike, let's talk some ball. Let's talk some football, man. You were at the press conferences today. Marcus Satterfield, of course, Clayton White. They speak every Wednesday. I've said this several times, man. It is great to at least hear from your coordinators. That was something that was not a part of the regular practice during the season previously. Now, we're able to hear responses to why did you run a halfback / defensive end pass down at the goal line? Why was there a bigger cushion on the perimeter, early in the game, stuff like that. So I want to say first, I appreciate that we're able to get those answers and that the coordinators are able to explain it in their own words, as opposed to just hearing from the head coach. So you were there, man. What were your, I guess, first takeaways from what we'll start with Satterfield and what Mark Satterfield had to say today?
Well, I think it all depends what way you're looking at it. I think with Satterfield, he came out, he took a lot of ownership. He went back to that goal line situation, not just the second down halfback pass, or we can call it a DN pass, because of course Birch is the one that came in and threw it. But you also talked about the DeCarrion Joyner coming in there doing the full house pistol at the 1 yard line after being able to run the football so well. I believe if I go back and I remember correctly, I think USC was averaging about like 7 yards a carry, like 7.172.2 yards a carry on that drive. So, of course, in hindsight, it's easy to say they should have ran it. But I think just even getting a feel of what was going on in that moment, it made sense. Now, I use the word feel because it seems like that's a word in particular that a lot of Gamecock fans have been using over the last couple days, and goes back probably the last couple weeks, but especially over the last couple days. And one of the questions that Sat was asked was, do you feel like you have a feel of the game, number one, and how important is that? And he says he does. He does feel like he has a feel. He feels like he understands right now what are becoming the strengths and weaknesses of this team. And I think, too, when you think about strengths and weaknesses, right? And I think I might be stealing this from you, Wes, because I know you were just on one of the local radio stations. We're seeing now Kevin Harris have a fullback, which we saw him do last season and have a lot of success for. So I think, look, there's a lot of reasons that you could say why the offense isn't here or where it's supposed to be, maybe. But I think what is true is this. Anytime you have a new coaching staff, it does take time. It does take time to figure out what works, because you have this plan in your head. You have this formula of, all right, this is what we're going to do. But sometimes that plan doesn't work because the players that you have currently aren't able to execute that. So you have to make adjustments. So that was one of the small adjustments that we saw last week, being able to see the fullback. But I just think that is the beginning of what we're going to see with Satterfield with being able to continue to add wrinkles in now that Doty is starting to get healthier. And you know that Doty's the guy after obviously the first 2 weeks of Nolan being the starting quarterback.
Yeah, and man, I think it's a good point. Not to sort of nobody here is trying to like sugarcoat anything. Obviously, South Carolina got beat. Obviously, offensively, the totality of the 6 games has not been what anybody in that ops building would have designed it to be, would have wanted it to be, would have hoped it would be. But I would say I was actually probably the most encouraged that I have been this season by the running game, just specifically against Tennessee, because I thought they ran the ball well, but with their base plays, like it wasn't. You go back to Troy game. To me, the Troy game is a good bit of smoke and mirrors, man. You had a couple of end arounds to Josh Van that really got the most of their yardage on the ground. There were some plays where you're trying to get the ball to Juju that probably counts as a pass in the stats, but is really an extension of your running game. But to me, against Tennessee, that's really the first time against a real, an FBS opponent throwing out Eastern Illinois. That's the first time I've seen them actually be able to line up and, whether it's inside zone, outside zone, and run the football with a little bit of actual success, and to find what appeared for a little while to maybe be the makings of some rhythm, which is something that I think has been lacking at times this year.
Yeah, and I put it out there on the on Gamecock Central just the other day, just trying to write a piece about some of the takeaways, and that's going to be obviously a piece that we do every Monday, mixing a water, and it's going to be more so kind of just being able to relax a little bit. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to be one that ever comes on here and sugarcoats things. I'm not going to be here just blowing smoke up, what. I'm not going to do that. I have no reason to. I didn't go to USC. I don't have ties to South Carolina. But of course, at the same time, too, I want to be able to give you guys a good perspective of what I think is going on. And, one of the things I had the chance to do is be able to watch the game with 2 former offensive linemen and 1 former quarterback this past weekend. And you get a great perspective when you watch a game with a former offensive lineman, especially someone that had played in the SEC. And I think a lot of the things, too, when you look at it, and this isn't to make excuses for Sapp, because at the end of the day, I'm looking at some of the comments right now, Wes. Travis said, why didn't we know Harris needed a fullback at the beginning of the spring? I think a lot of it has to go back to is this. At the end of the day, regardless of what Harris was able to do last year, regardless of what the offensive line was able to do from a push standpoint, they were a 2-8 team. They were a 2-8 team. You're bringing in a new coaching staff for a reason. You're bringing in a new coaching staff to implement changes, both offensively, defensively, and special teams. We've seen that difference on special teams already. But on an offensive standpoint, yes, you can have this vision of what you want to do. I think back to my senior year. I don't care if it's Division II, Division I, Division III, NAIA. When you have a new coaching staff comes in, they have what they want to be able to implement. And we had guys, because we were in a great team. What do? They put new running backs in. Well, things didn't work out. We went back to some of the old things that we used to do. And what happened? That was all conference to finish out the year after not playing that much the first 2 games. So I use that as a small example because that's what happens across any level of college football. And I think that's what we're seeing here with USC. They had a game plan. It just didn't work out that way. You have to adjust. So maybe it won't show in the sense of being able to put up 20, 30, 40 points a game, but you will see you'll gradually see improvements. And I do think that we saw some of the improvements this week, even though it might not look at it big picture wise, but being able to run the football with the fullback is something that has benefited Kevin Harris in the past. And I think we saw that this past week. And I think we're going to continue to see new wrinkles from Satterfield moving forward because he realizes, hey, I have a game plan, but we got to start working towards the strengths of the players that we have right now. And if we want to go spread maybe or this or that down the line in the future, that's great. Right now, though, you got to worry about the future. Right now, you got to worry about the present.
Mike, before we get back to football, I want to hit on a couple things you got going on. Mark here asking about your Mix in a Water t-shirt. Why don't, for those who don't follow Mike on Twitter, go ahead, give him a follow. But Mike, tell them about the background of the Mix in a Water shirt. It's really a great story, and it's not just a matter of putting together a cool t-shirt and
Yeah.
kind of putting it out there and making some money for yourself. There's a great story behind it and a great cause as well. So if you want to, man, take the floor and tell Mark and everybody else about the Mix in the Water shirts.
Yeah, so for those of you that can't see, get the graphics here. It's a mix in a water, and for those of you that do follow me on Twitter, that's just a fun little saying that we have. When people are overreacting on Twitter, it's a phrase I got way back in the day at family parties when my dad would tell some of the family members, like, "All right, might be an outlandish take, but someone suggested that you should make T-shirts." And when people started to respond saying, "Yeah, we buy one," I thought, "All right, you know what? I'm not going to do it for me. I want to be able to give back to this community. You guys have been tremendous ever since I've got down here in 2016." So we had numerous people reach out, kind of pitching why we should use some of that money for their foundation or a charity of their choice. And we had a USC student reach out and shared a story about their fraternity brother, who was the president of that fraternity, who passed away by suicide at the end of August. His name was James Royal. And what we're doing with that money is every time we sell one of these shirts, we had, I believe it was glass cups for a little bit, mugs, sweatshirts, hats. But I think right now we're just selling the T-shirts at the time. But all that money is going to the James Royal Memorial Foundation. His mother, Liz, I had an opportunity to speak with her a couple weeks ago. She's actually coming down for the Vandy game, so the plan is to be able to present them that check, not in this, this big ceremony or this Happy Gilmore style check, but the game plan is to be able to present them that check, because that'll be special. But that Memorial Foundation is going to be able to help people that are dealing with mental health challenges, and being able to continue to get the word out there and being able to fix what this stigma is. I mean, there's a stigma out there, and having that long conversation with James's mother, Liz, she definitely thinks that being able to have those resources out there could help someone. So this is for a former Gamecock student, who did so much for so many. He was the president of his fraternity, as I mentioned before. Such a smart kid, such a selfless kid. He would leave positive messages on the fridge for his roommates when they woke up in the morning. He would help his buddies out and the fraternity out when there were people that were just feeling down on themselves. But unfortunately, they just never picked up on the signs of everything he was going through. So that is what these Mix in a Water shirts are. If you already have one, I would love to be able to see them out there on Saturday, because like I said, James's mother, Liz, is coming down there, and we've had long talks about this. She has hers. I know that would be a very special sight to see if we can see as many. So just big thank you for anyone that has already got one. If you haven't, my DMs are always open. I can send you the link, because I think it's DC4L. Just be careful, because unfortunately there have been some sites that have been selling these shirts or claiming to sell them, and they have nothing to do with us. And it's disgusting when people try to do that to just make a quick buck. But if you want to be safe, you're interested, just shoot me a DM and I will get you that link. And like I said, thank you, Gamecock Nation. We have raised over $4,000 already for the James Royal Memorial Foundation, which is just a small part of what they're doing from a family standpoint, and everything else beyond that. He's a Maryland guy, so they've been raising money back at home as well.
Yeah, great calls, man. And I, for those who are not following Mike, it's at Mike_Uva. I just went back and found your tweet with the link. I retweeted that on my account as well.
Thank you.
And if
tweet that as well.
Yeah, and if folks are on, obviously you're not gonna be able to see this if you're like just listening on the podcast version, but if you're watching us right now, you should now be able to see on Facebook or YouTube the direct link to the DC4L Custom Tees product that should pull up Mix in a Water. That is, again, DC4L Custom Tees, and that should be the direct link to get you there. But great stuff, man. Really cool, and really cool that y'all, when I say y'all, I mean like the listeners, the readers, the viewers, have supported this to the extent that you have. Always been amazed at Gamecock Nation and how they will rally around a moment or rally around people, when they're in need. And obviously, cool for you to be able to bring attention to this and now give an avenue for everybody out there to support this financially as well, man. Let's go back into some football now. Offensive side, I think some of the talk about the offense, man, it kind of just gets to the point of It's like we've all, and when I say all, like all of us media folks, we've been talking about it for like 6 weeks now. It's like there's only so much you can say at some point. Sometimes it's going to just be about, can they get better in these final 6 games and kind of find that little next level of execution. I know Beamer's talked about it. Satterfield's talked about how a little thing that like they're going to see on film. Hey, if this one guy makes this correct step, if this one guy sustains this block, if one guy, the 11, doesn't have a mental error here, it maybe the whole play doesn't get blown up. And I think, Mike, it's kind of one of those things. Fans, frankly, sometimes just get tired of hearing that because they're looking at the results of the business. But then coaches probably, I feel like, are being honest when they tell us those things. And they're also, I imagine, Mike, trying to continue to express confidence in their guys because they don't want for there to be any sense among the players that there's a lack of confidence from their coaches. So I know there's not really a question in there, man, but how do you sort of, I guess, frame up the, the difference between like just the results and Satterfield, to his credit, I've never heard an excuse out of his mouth. It's always been, it has to be better. And he even said today, I think that was your question when he said, statistically, it has not been what any of us want. But then he talked about the improvements that they are seeing internally within the team as well.
Well, let's look at a big picture because I said this at the beginning of the year before the season started, more so for Shane Beamer, but you could say the same for an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, even a special teams coordinator at that point with Pete Limbo. At the end of the day, and I know fans don't want to hear this, I get it, because like I said, I've been in a situation where I was a senior and I don't want to hear it. Seniors don't want to hear it because that's your last opportunity. And fans, you're spending a lot of money. You put so much time and you invest so much of your energy into supporting a team. You don't want to waste a year. I get that. The reality is this. Record at the end of the day this year really means absolutely nothing in comparison to what you are building from a foundation standpoint in trust. You want the underclassmen to trust you. You want the underclassmen to buy into what you are feeding them. And the most difficult part in this is when you do start to teeter-totter a little bit. Of course, they're 3-3. Is the world over right now? No, the world's not coming to an end right now. But with that being said, we know from an offensive standpoint, things have been extremely difficult. I know our guy Colin Taylor over at Gamecock Central wrote a tremendous piece earlier this week. I think it was just on Monday, Tuesday, about some of the things that you can look at as progress or how to measure progress. And USC actually ranks 108th in the country per plays per point or points per play, That's second to last in the conference. So I mention all that because there are things that you can measure and it's just like, what are we doing? You don't want guys to not buy in because as underclassmen, you're watching what the upperclassmen are doing because you don't know any better. You're a freshman. Some of these guys that were even here last year, they didn't get a true feel with everything going on with COVID. They don't know what the heck college football is all about. They're watching what the upperclassmen are doing. So if the upperclassmen start to throw in the towel and they're like, screw this with Satterfield or this or that, that's just not going to help them out for the future. Now, does that mean you automatically have to go get a new offensive coordinator? No, but that's just not going to help you. Whether you have to bring a new OC in or not, if you're doing those kind of things, it's going to put you behind the 8 ball in terms of trying to speed up the process of getting to where you want to be come year 2, come year 3, come year 4. So I think more than anything, it is really easy to get caught up with the number of wins, and I get it, especially considering where USC has been the last 2 seasons. But you want to be able to build this foundation. You need this foundation to be strong. And if the underclassmen, who are going to be the foundation of this program, if they're not bought into what is going on going forward, you are going to be screwed, at least in the short term. Not saying it's impossible to overcome that in year 2, year 3, year 4, but it makes things that much more difficult. You need guys to buy in. Fans, I understand that. You don't necessarily care about that big picture-wise sometimes because you're just so focused on the number of wins, and I get it. I understand that. But I can't say it enough because I know I've been here. It's my 6th season. I know people are tired of hearing the word have patience. This team needs to have patience within. If you guys don't want to have patience, I understand that. But it's huge for the underclassmen to have patience, because if they don't have patience, it's going to just set things back even further in terms of having Beamer and this offense and this defense being able to get to where they want to go to in the future.
Well, I think, Mike, it's important, in my opinion, for the fan base to be able to, in some way, draw that line, draw that distinction between the last 5 years.
Absolutely.
We're not at fault of the current staff. Like, you there was a change for a reason, as you said. Like, you aren't changing coaches just for the fun of it. There was a change because they had to make a change. They won 2 games last year. They won 4 games the year before in a traditional schedule. So you have to sort of, I believe, kind of walk that line. Yes, are there things that need to be improved? No question. Nobody is saying that they aren't, but at the same time, you have to draw that hard line between when you see something that, oh, that reminds me of something I saw last year. That's not on Marcus Satterfield. That's not on Shane Beamer. That's a completely, almost literally a completely different staff. There's one assistant coach that has a holdover from that staff to this staff as far as the on-field coaches go. So I know fans are frustrated. I get it. But I think Beamer's point has kind of been, hey, it's 3-3. Could be better, could be worse. But there were always going to be growing pains when you bring in a new coach, a new staff, a first-year coach at that. There's always going to be growing pains. We may not have even known exactly what those growing pains were going to be coming in, but they were always going to exist. Now, to me, Mike, it's going to be about not even about wins and losses the final half of the year. On-field improvement.
And let me go back, because Mark Anderson's 1,000% right, and I probably stated wins and losses a little bit too strong. Mark, you're absolutely right. Not every fan is judging this season based on wins and losses. You're absolutely correct. It's more about seeing that progress. You want to be able to see that progress. I totally get it. I think what I meant by the wins and losses is, it's easy to look at something because you want to be able to have something that you could physically hold and physically be able to see, and like, all right, this is how many wins South Carolina has this year. That's the progress. This is what we're seeing from a statistical standpoint, and the offense improving. That's what we want to be able to see. Some of the things that South Carolina truly needs are things that none of us are ever really going to know about until towards the end of the year and heading into next season. And that's the stuff that's taking place inside that locker room, and just that trust. That trust is so important. If guys don't have trust, it really does screw up a plan. As far as what South Carolina needs to do moving forward, Wes, and we kind of talked about it a little while ago, but I failed to mention it. Watching it with those former players, and this is not saying that Satterfield has been perfect by any means. I think what he has done, though, and I kind of alluded to it before, he's starting to make adjustments based off of what they have. And I think you're going to continue to see that. What are the strengths and weaknesses of our team based on what I had as an offensive coordinator and the vision that I had? What do I have to do to tinker things? What I did notice, though, listening to some of the guys that I watched the game with the other day, there were opportunities where holes were there, and the running back is bouncing it to the outside. They're not trusting what they're seeing in front of them. Wide receivers rounding out some of their routes, not coming back towards the football, and just doing little things like that. Doty holding on to the football just a little bit too long, or not being himself still and having that running lane and taking off. So I mention all that because at the end of the day, this isn't just a Marcus Satterfield issue. This isn't just an offensive line issue. This is an offensive unit issue right now. Everyone needs to be able to get in sync a little bit more. Everyone needs to be held accountable here. The execution needs to be better. The play calling needs to be more consistent. It needs to improve. I think we have started to see that. It just hasn't translated into the results, into the statistics, into the points that it would be a little bit easier to say, yeah, see, things are better, because the execution needs to get better. So like I said, this isn't to say Satterfield is not should not be held responsible. He absolutely should. He's getting paid a lot of money. He'd be the first one to tell you that. But big picture, this is an offensive unit issue. Everyone needs to be able to pick things up, and they have 6 more opportunities to do that.
Some good stuff here from our listeners and viewers. By the way, Zach says the points per average very, very bad for South Carolina. Zach, what site do you use for those type of analytics? I'm curious. I've tried to get more into like the analytical side of things. We have access to PFF, which I think does a pretty good job for certain things, but I know there's so many resources out there that let you dive a little bit deeper into stats. I'd love to check some of those out, man. Zach also says, to Uva's point, it does feel like the offense has looked more fluid over the last 2 weeks. They look more together, less discombobulated than previously. And I think, guys, there's less of sort of the pre-snap penalties we saw, the issues getting lined up. I mean, let's go back to the Georgia game when there were issues just getting the play in, getting guys in position and lined up and snapping the ball. I think one of the best decisions they've made, Mike, has been to say a lot of times they're getting a play in and lining up, and they're doing the let's look to the sideline thing, change it if you need to, leave it the same if you don't. But, to your point, Mike, let's not pretend the staff hasn't been trying to adjust as they've gone. They have definitely been trying to find what's going to work for this team, find an identity, and put this offense together, man. So let's talk sort of big picture moving forward. We haven't hit any defense. So what were your takeaways from Clayton White today, man?
I think Clayton, he hit upon it that they are making progress. Obviously, they can definitely improve in areas. We could talk about the run game in particular. But one thing that I asked them, because anytime when you have a new coordinator come in, you're learning a new defense in particular, I said, are you comfortable where this defense is at in comparison to the vision you had maybe going into the season, right? You're heading it's week 6, heading into week 7 point. Are you pleased with the amount of information, the amount of scheme that you've been able to implement so far, and have they been able to grasp it quick enough? And he was very pleased with it. He said, we are on time. Where we are right now is exactly where I envisioned us being at the beginning of the year. And I think number one, I think he's speaking the truth. And I think the reason being is because, has USC's defense been perfect this year? No. But at the same time, too, look where this defense was a year ago. Look at just some of the mistakes this team had a year ago. And look at how this team, especially from a turnover standpoint, has just been creating chaos for offenses week in and week out. Now, when I say chaos, does that mean that they are playing perfect defense? No, because they're giving up a lot of yards. But then again, in college football, go look at some of the statistics. There's going to be a lot of yards. It's that bend, don't break mentality more than anything. And we have seen South Carolina do a good job in the red zone. This past game, that first half, first quarter in particular, was that the case? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I don't like to be like, well, put that aside, put the Georgia game aside. But when you do stuff like that and you look at what else they've been doing, it's actually been pretty consistent. They've done a pretty good job, even the Kentucky game. And who knows with the Wildcats how that season's going to end for them. But at least right now, they're one of the best teams in the country. You only allowed 1 touchdown to them. So I think there is a lot of good things to be able to, hang your hat on. But at the same time, too, this defense still has areas to improve on. But I think you got to be pleased with what they've at least showed you, like I said, compared to where they were a year ago. And you think about some of these games. And I understand some of those guys aren't back from a year ago, but you do have a lot of players that are back. And some of the faces that you have in the defensive backfield, it's new. So they haven't all played with each other. So he's been pleased with the communication, which is very, very important when you play a 4-2-5 defense. And I think more than anything, too, it's good to see the guys starting to just trust what a coach is telling them to do, because we saw what happened last year against Ole Miss. You think about some of these marathon games in a sense where it was just track meets, right? I say marathons because it was more than just a track meet. It seems like teams were just running all 26.2 miles on you. So it is good to see that progress, but of course, plenty of work still to be done for that defense.
Mike, have you ever run 26.2 miles at the same time in a row?
No, I've always wanted to do a Boston Marathon, though. They're going to be having one in a couple more months. They just had their first one in 910 days just this past Monday. So after COVID, put a wrinkle into it. So I think the longest I've run.
Have you done the half, a 13.1?
Oh, hell no. You give me way too much credit. I did. I've done a 5K back.
Yeah, 5K?
I did. We might have some of our subscribers or just people that are listening could be part of the F3 crew. I did one of those F3 runs at like 5:30 in the morning down in 5 Points before. I think it was 4 miles. God bless those people. But maybe I'll do that again one day. Maybe I'll get you out there. So any of our F3 listeners, do what you did to me, to Wes, which is just guilt him, tweet at him daily and say you can't do it or whatever, and see if you can get his butt out of bed at 5:30 or 5 like I did. That'd be good.
I've done the F3 thing a couple of times before.
Oh,
Now it wasn't a run that day. It was more
you're
it
more
was just
into
a bunch of different stuff.
You're more into bulking. That's what it is.
Well, no, this was like burpees and short yardage and stuff like that. Like, not just, hey guys, we're gonna get out here and just run 4 miles like that. That sounds miserable to me. But I've never gone over 5K. I feel like
you start, and I know there's a bunch of different F3 groups throughout the state, and they it's like friendly competition. They have rivalries, and it's awesome. What they do is tremendous. But the group that I was with, you started near Starbucks. You ran up the street towards the gas station, like heading towards Benedict, and then you turn around, run around behind the Trips dry cleaners, come down their home team or Jake's. The cool thing was back in the day, and I say back in the day as if this really was that long ago, you'd be doing this before 6 a.m. So before this individual whose name that we will not mention, because I don't want to make things political, decided that bars have to shut down at 2 now, you would have people leaving the bar at like 5:30. You'd be running by and people were clapping for you. I mean, it was awesome. So that was the one time I did that. The bars were still open till 6. So that was a good time.
Okay, I'm in. So if you got some F3 folks listening, if y'all aggravate me enough, I'll come do one of the runs. If Mike will do it again, I will do it.
I just want to say thank you to username Beamerball 2.0. He said that he bought one of the Mix in the Water shirts. So thank you. Appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, shout out to Beamerball 2.0. Appreciate you. Again, I go to Mike's Twitter, go to my Twitter. I'm gonna retweet that on the Gamecock Central Twitter as soon as we get off here and I have access to it. And yeah, buy a shirt again for a great cause. Mike, let's close it out, man. Final 6 games. What are you going to be watching most closely? What do you think would make South Carolina fans happy? Like, what are some things you would pinpoint where you're like, man, if they can do this and this, then it's going to mean pretty good things? Because I think the final 6 games isn't really even about this season. It's kind of about finding something to just build on moving forward, going into the offseason where your team, your fans, where everybody feels that level of confidence going into year 2.
I think there's 2 things that stand out to me, and they kind of go together. And the first one, and I think the most important one, is being able to see Luke Doty continue to make progress. And I think more than anything, seeing him be able to use his feet a little bit more, being able to throw the football a little bit downfield a little bit more, and just feeling like himself again. I think that will come, and I think that kind of goes with the next point that I was going to mention, is just seeing USC be able to score some more points. If they're able to score some more points, just put some more energy into that crowd. What's the easiest way to add energy into a college football stadium? Score points. Score points. I mean, shoot, look at some of those Big 12 teams and just how that conference is, right? I mean, some of those scores are like 40 to 50, this and that, but it brings excitement into the stadium, even if you're not having that great of a year. So bring some type of excitement. Bring some type of excitement back in there. Travis is right. Have some type of identity on offense. I think we know from a talent standpoint that South Carolina's talent is in that running back room. It just hasn't been on full display for multiple reasons. We could talk about miscommunication on the offensive line. There is a point too, Wes, and I want to go back to it. I do feel like at the beginning of the year, someone asked, and I don't know if I can scroll up and find it. I do feel like at the beginning of the year, whether or not the USC will ever admit this, I do feel like the players were a little overwhelmed at the beginning of the year in terms of what they were being asked to do. I think that wasn't going to be shown against a team like EIU just because of the skill comparison and the talent comparison compared to what EIU had and what USC had. But I do think it was a little overwhelming. And I think as the season's gone on, Satterfield has been able to simplify things a little bit. They've been able to pick up on it because this is a smart unit as well. But things are just different. I mean, it's like being taught how to do math or I don't know, do a language, 2 things that I'm not great at. So maybe these aren't the great examples to use. But, you had a teacher tell you how to do it a specific way, right? Like 2 + 2 = 4. Then you have someone else come in and they're telling you, well, you could actually do 3 + 1 = 4, 4 + 0. So the point being is there's different things that they are learning. And when you have someone that has taught you, whether it be an offensive coordinator, whether it be an offensive line coach or a positional group coach, it does make things a little more challenging, but it all goes back to the one thing I mentioned earlier before of what this team needs to do moving forward, which is you have to have trust. You have to have trust between the players and that positional group coach, or in this case, too, the offensive coordinator.
And Mike, good stuff, man. Really appreciate it. And yeah, to your point, I think so we had Langston Moore on yesterday, and he was talking about how he came in as a freshman and he didn't know any better. He's like, man, we're winning the national title. You know, it didn't matter that South Carolina had gone 1-10 the year before. He was coming in. You know, he had been recruited. He was excited to play in the SEC. He's like, you know, we at the very least we're probably going 10-2, but we're probably winning the national title. South Carolina goes 0-11. So somehow, though, he said the locker room was able to stay together. Like there wasn't that finger pointing, that the guys were able to see enough progress internally that they kind of stuck together. They built off of it, and they knew internally they were building, even if it wasn't necessarily that readily noticeable in the results. Well, what happens? They come back his second year, go to an Outback Bowl. They beat Ohio State. They go 8-4. Really, and it was actually statistically one of the biggest turnarounds in college football history. So not that this is necessarily the exact same by any means, but that sort of triggered in my brain when you were talking earlier about how important it is for these guys to remain confident and confident in the plan moving forward, if they are going to be able to build off this season, man.
It's not easy. It's not easy too, and I think what makes it more challenging nowadays in comparison to Langston's time period, or I mean, shoot, even just 10, 11 years ago when I was playing, the challenging part now is you have social media. You have social media, and this isn't to put it on fans or anything like it's not to put it all on fans, but I think the challenging part is you do see a lot of negative. And we can sit here and say, oh, yeah, players aren't on social media. That's a load of crap. Go ask any former player. You know, for the most part, those guys are still looking at what's going on. It's impossible not to see stuff. So between recruits, they see what is going on. You handle things the right way. You're not putting out stupid things as a player. Other recruits see that. Underclassmen see that. Things that might not necessarily be on social media. It could just be, I don't know, even in a group chat. If you're an upperclassman, just how you text, how you're talking in the dining hall about either the players that you're with or the coaching staff you're with, that can make a big difference on these younger guys moving forward as well.
Mike, we appreciate the time, man. And you introduced me last show to what you call a tease. So why don't you tell the Gamecock fans a little bit about just some thoughts on what they can experience moving forward? Because I'm really excited about some stuff that you're going to be working on the site, and I'm excited about this too, man. Yeah. You're officially Biscuit Boy with Bojangles. I definitely want my free chicken sandwich, man. Tell everybody a little bit about this.
I know. I kind of feel like Happy Gilmore with the other. I can't say like that. The different things I'm told what I can and can't say anymore. But with this partnership with Bojangles, I'm very excited. For those of you that have followed this this crazy and makes really no sense at times thing with this whole biscuit that I got, the Uva, back in January, it has took on a life of its own. And what people maybe don't know, or maybe they don't remember, Justin Stepp is like the reason why I went to Bojangles that day after his introductory press conference. So every time I see Coach Stepp, I said, hey, thank you for making me go to Bojangles that day, basically recruiting me there. In a sense, you know, obviously he didn't say, you know, but he just mentioned Bojangles so much. So got a tremendous partnership now with Bojangles. And what that's going to do is that's going to be able to bring Bojangles and Gamecock fans closer than ever before. I'll be able to explain more of that in the coming weeks. Be on the lookout. If you enjoy Bojangles, you enjoy free food, we got you covered. We got you. On top of that, as far as Gamecock Central is concerned, and talking about this expansion with our digital platform, there are some things that we will continue to roll out over the next couple weeks, but we are continuing to add more video elements. So look, if you enjoyed Gamecock Central, you enjoy being able to read, you enjoy being able to watch the shows that Wes and Chris have done over the last couple of years, that those aren't going anywhere. Promise you, those aren't going anywhere. But we're also going to give you the option to be able to watch some video too. So if you enjoy just Gamecock content, you are going to be able to get more of it from Gamecock Central, unlike anywhere else in this state. I promise you that. And we're going to continue to add more and more elements into it from a video standpoint. So I'm going to be posting something later today as far as the offense is concerned. The production value will continue to get better. Poor Colin. Poor Colin Taylor was holding.
You put him to work today? You put him to work?
Put him to work. So the tripod's not in yet. So Colin was holding the camera. He looked like he was over at the fairgrounds on one of those roller coasters, a little shaky, but it's all right. He did his best. Now someone's going to send that to him. He's going to be all upset and like, it's screw you. I ain't helping you ever again. Colin, he did a great job. I'm just busting your chops, pal. He did comment a lot on the grass. So anyone that knows Colin, he's like aging like he's, aging 5 weeks each week now, ever since he got a home and waters his grass every week. But
yeah, he's
Colin,
25 going on 50, I think.
It's freaking unbelievable. I mean, holy cow. But yeah, we're going to continue to add more video elements, and we're going to get some of the former players too mixed in with that. And we're very excited. And there's some things that we are just going to throw right at you and kind of surprise you as well. It's going to be good.
Mikey, good stuff, man. Looking forward to it. We'll do it again soon. Okay, bud?
Appreciate it, buddy.
Yep. See ya. That's Mike Uva, Gamecock Central's Mike Uva. Good stuff from him, as always. Before we close it out here, I got to tell y'all a little bit about our friends at Dead Soxy. They're another sponsor here on GC Live. You can get 25% off your order from Dead Soxy with the code COCKY. Again, COCKY, 25% off your order at Dead Soxy. And that meeting with Mike, we shall say, was brought to you by our good friends at Primal Gourmet, another sponsor of GC Live, and big sponsor on GamecockCentral.com as well. If you want to try Primal Gourmet, go to primalgourmetsc.com and use the code GCOCK20 to get 20% off your first order. Had lunch from there yesterday, and outstanding food. If you are a meal prep person but don't want to actually prep your meals, maybe you're trying to lose a little bit of weight, which I am right now, check out Primal Gourmet. They have chef-created meal packs that are outstanding. So we appreciate Mike. I appreciate you. Again, announcement from Oscar Delp coming up tonight. Probably not good news for the Gamecocks, but we'll see where South Carolina goes from there. We'll, of course, have complete recruiting coverage on Gamecock Central moving forward. And appreciate y'all for joining us. Tomorrow, that is Thursday, we'll actually have Chris Lee from the Vandy Rivals site. That's vandysports.com. Chris, as tied in with Vanderbilt as anybody on the planet, pretty much the marquee Vandy insider as far as what's going on, not just within their football program, but within their entire athletic department. So it'll be always great to hear from Chris. We'll have him on tomorrow about 2:05, I think. And then on Friday, we'll be joined by Preston Thorne, former Gamecock. Much like with Langston Moore earlier this week, we're going to talk about a number of topics with Preston. Great dude, good friend of mine, and we're looking forward to talking to Preston and catching up with him. So appreciate y'all. If you have any other questions, head on over to GamecockCentral.com. Hit the Insiders Forum. If not, then I'll see you all on Thursday. Appreciate it.